All right, hey, what's up? I'm going to be going over the story of how I built a revenue-generating startup in just 21 days. I'm going to be talking about Project Belvedere. It's basically a paid networking service for college students to help them get job placement. Project Belvedere falls under this startup challenge framework that I have, 100 users in 7 days challenge. It's a challenge that prioritizes the company growth and user growth over anything. You'd have to get 100 users in 7 days, then you'd have to get 1,000 in 21 days, and then 10,000 in 42 days. If you didn't reach any of those challenge benchmarks, then you couldn't go on further. It would kind of be a checks and balance system for making sure that your startup was actually growing. And if it wasn't, then you just reset. Give you guys a brief kind of like timeline and overview of what happened in Project Belvedere, the things that I learned, some of the success stories, and what I'm doing now. So let's do the timeline. When we get to day 1 and day 2, this is when we have two main things. We have offer creation and then client acquisition strategy. Offer creation is basically what type of value are you going to give to the user that will then get them to pay money. And then client acquisition strategy is how do you get somebody who has never heard about your service at all, finds out about your service, and then converts. Now we get to day 3. Day 3 is when I start sending out mass emails to underclassmen. So I decided to send out to 220-ish engineering students. So we'll get into the controversy in a sec, but one of the people that I accidentally emailed was my dean, actually. So my dean happened to be on the underclassmen list, which I didn't realize since there was 200 people. So I accidentally sent them an email. We get to day 5 and I actually have my first paying customer. The emails that I sent out to underclassmen, they basically had a call to action at the end of the email that said, hey, set up a meeting with me. Here's all the services that I can offer you. I didn't really mention a paywall. So during the actual sales meeting that I would have with these students, that's when then I would mention, hey, there's also this premium track. I offered a free track to students and then a premium one. So, hey, if you pay me, I'll actually like really help you out. I'll guarantee you basically get a job. Before that, I got an email from the dean that was like, because I addressed my dean as a student basically. It's like, hey, here's this, offer that I can give you. So my dean responded and was like, what's going on here? Let's set up a meeting. So I did end up getting in trouble with the dean. Using the email system for soliciting is just, it's not a good idea, and it goes against like terms of service at the school. I was like, okay, I completely understand. Now, day 7, we get to the checkpoint. So as I mentioned before, this challenge has a framework where once you reach a certain day, you have to have a certain amount of users. So by day 7, I had 31 users, which if you know from the challenge is not 100. So I actually ended up technically failing the first challenge checkpoint. But I also realized day 7, it was really hard for me to have gotten 100 users. So I ended up actually allowing myself to pass since I think the framework was a little bit too aggressive. So I was like, all right, I'm going to let myself pass with 31 users. Then we get to day 7 through day 11, a bunch more meetings set up with students. So I'm just doing meeting after meeting. This time I'm not soliciting because, I got in trouble with the dean. So I'm just offering everything for free. And I wanted to basically just give all the services at this point. I created everything, may as well just give it out. Something I realized from meeting with a bunch of students over and over again was that it was super manual heavy. If I were to do this service again, I would definitely automate the actual sales process and the conversion process rather than an in-person sales meeting, or at least sell higher ticket items. So now is when we get to some of the juicier stuff. As I mentioned, there was a little bit of controversy in terms of the alumni list that I was offering as a service. So I ended up getting a cease and desist from Cooper. Just checked in my email one day and I'm like, whoa, this is high importance, marked with all these things, comes from the dean of students or dean of something. Cease and desist for data mining the alumni list, and then cease and desist for using the email system for mass outreach. Day 12 is also when I met my current co-founder through my live stream. Now we're on day 15, so I mentioned the cease and desist from before. This is when we set up the meeting with the admin and the dean and security. So I had my kind of Mark Zuckerberg moment that he had with Harvard when he got in a bunch of security for actually creating Facebook and kind of going against these like security protocols.
Mr. Zuckerberg, this is an administrative board hearing. You're being accused of intentionally breaching security, violating copyrights, violating individual privacy by creating the website www.facemash.com. You're also charged with being in violation of university policy on distribution of digitized images. Before we begin with our questioning, you're allowed to make a statement. Would you like to do so?
I've already apologized in the Crimson to the ABHW, to Forza Latina, and to any women at Harvard who may have been insulted, as I take it that they were. As for any charges stemming from the breach of security, I believe I deserve some recognition from this board.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Which part?
You deserve recognition.
I believe I pointed out some pretty gaping holes in your system.
Excuse me, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I'm in charge of security for all computers on the Harvard network, and I can assure you of its sophistication. In fact, it was that level of sophistication that led us to you in less than 4 hours.
4 hours?
Yes, sir.
That would be impressive, except if you had known what you were looking for, you would have seen it written on my dorm room window.
The social network is basically about Mark Zuckerberg and how he created Facebook and the people who he did it with, and that whole story. So I thought that was really cool. So I have an audio recording of that, so I'm going to put that in the YouTube. I'll just pause it right now.
You've upset a few offices on campus pretty severely, just so that you're aware. Like, IT is very unhappy with the actions that you've taken. Alumni Affairs is also not super thrilled. I don't know if other offices have been affected, but this is really serious. I'm gonna do a little bit more fact finding, but you don't really seem to grasp how serious this potentially is for you, and that's a little concerning to me. I appreciate that you got access. I'm still a little bit unclear about how, because IT's perspective is alumni's perspective is they don't have record of how you would have had access to the system. So if you still have those emails, that would be really helpful, because
Yeah, of course.
The other logical inference.
I can look for them.
Okay.
Because this would be a security flaw. Because from my understanding, there's not a public knowledge base for me not having access to the alumni portal. So when I look up Cooper Union alumni on Google, and this is the first thing that comes up, me signing into it isn't out of the ordinary.
Okay.
And so me trying to find a way is not out of the ordinary. So I would say that it's a security flaw if someone like me has access to it when I didn't hack into it and I just went through the email routes.
Okay.
I'd also be open to setting up meetings with IT or anybody who needs, just to help them out in terms of the situation, because I didn't do this out of malice, so I'd like to help them if there's a security concern. So yeah, even though after that meeting, it sounds really exciting and it's kind of like a movie moment, I was scared out of my mind. I'd never been in that much of a hot seat in terms of attention from the school. There were a lot of people who knew my name in that last week because of the actions that I'd done. So I was playing it a little bit, or I played it much safer after that. Now that I can look back on it, I'm like, wow, that's a really cool moment. Thankfully, nothing bad happened, and it all kind of just went to the side. But yeah, it's a great memory that I have, so I can look back on it. But in the moment, it was completely chaotic. Okay, so when we get past that, now we're basically day 16 through day 18, keeping my head down. I'm working, I'm building out the full service model. So as I mentioned, I was doing manual fulfillment. Now I wanted to actually automate it and put it on a website or something that people can just stumble on. Students anywhere in the country can stumble on. That way I can actually scale it up. Then we get to day 19. So with the original dean that I had gotten in trouble with, I ended up following up with her because I was like, hey, you know what? May as well turn this attention into something good rather than it being negative. So I was like, hey, I'd love to set up a follow-up meeting with you and actually pitch you on an idea that I have to give a TED Talk to a bunch of underclassmen to teach them about how to get jobs. I think that the curriculum for recruiting and networking is actually basically non-existent. The majority of people, when they want to get a job, they'll go through job boards, which in my opinion is super antiquated for today's kind of day, because you're competing against thousands and tens of thousands of students that are trying to get this job. Whereas if you network and get in touch with the people who can actually make those hiring decisions for you, you can basically skip that entire line. She was like, great. I actually ended up spending a whole day researching her background, kind of her mindset, and building this pitch around that. The first meeting I had with her went really badly, and that was because I just didn't know her archetype. Once I understood that, I was able to just pitch it a lot better and actually speak in the language that she would want to be spoken in. I think that was a huge moment that I had where I realized, damn, if I just do enough research about the person I'm going to pitch something to, it's almost impossible to lose. You're just stacking the cards in your favor. It's like totally worth researching and just knowing like what makes this person tick. Why are they the way that they are, and like what language really gets into their head and like actually makes them motivated to help you rather than to, you know, push you away. Basically, she's like, yeah, perfect. There's this end of the year meeting with a bunch of underclassmen. It's kind of like a little party thing. You can totally give a pitch then. I'll give you 10, 15 minutes, whatever you want. Just give your pitch, kind of teach them how to get jobs. So I ended up doing that. That was super amazing. Now we're into day 19 into day 21. This is when I am still doing manual fulfillment, still working on the website. I realized the actual creating the full stack website and like automating it entirely was going to take longer than I thought. So I was like, shit, I'm not going to make it by day 21. Day 21 is where I ended up stopping. I stopped at around 30 something ish users. The churn rate was kind of high actually, in terms of students just being like, oh, I can just do this myself rather than paying you to do it. So now we're going to go into lessons that I took away from this. The first one that I learned was how natural, the natural affinity that people have for uniqueness. So what do I mean by that? I was doing something compared to my other classmates that's very unique. I'm a founder building a startup, trying to solicit to other students. Not many people kind of do that. That's a great lesson and takeaway that I had, because prior to actually starting that, I felt very self-conscious about actually doing this startup and like taking that leap of faith. But once you actually do, it's really reassuring knowing that your friends and family are actually going to support you. Another lesson I learned, this one's kind of simple. In the earliest stages of a startup, you have to do it solo, and that is the only way. As a founder, it's in your best interest to start something solo immediately, build it into something, and then onboard co-founders maybe a month in, maybe 2 months in. The next one, being bold and being disruptive means you get both positive and negative attention no matter what. I was very disruptive. I think I disrupted kind of the school in a sense, and that gave me a bunch of attention, both positive and negative. How you end up wielding that is up to you. I think that all negative attention can be wielded into something positive. You just have to frame it in the correct way. Okay, another thing. This kind of goes into the negative attention. The general population is intolerant of the entrepreneurial mindset. Why do I say that? I think that when people see something different and they don't know who you are, their initial reaction is going to be negative. It's your job to actually kind of befriend them and to show them actually the validity of the project that you're working on, rather than them to make assumptions from like an outside perspective. So I'll take this with the deans. I think that their initial reaction was very negative because they could only see my project from a surface level. But once I kind of expanded on it and I actually gave them my mindset, they were actually much more on board with it. Okay, another lesson I took away from this lifestyle is very fulfilling. In just basically 21 days, I managed to have 3-4 really good stories that I can tell to other people, just by like doing cool things. So I would definitely advocate for like this type of framework. Another huge takeaway and lesson that I learned is that this lifestyle is very juxtaposed. So what do I mean by that? On one side, it's very intellectually connecting. I think the people in this world, they're literally sharks. They're so motivated, and they want to take over the world, right? They want to disrupt the world. They want to add crazy value to the world. I really, really love that mindset. On the other side of this is very isolating in terms of family life, in terms of connecting with people romantically. I think that you have to make a choice in life. It's really hard to straddle the line between like doing crazy, great, world-changing things and also building kind of like a family. It's something that I'm going to have to figure out eventually, but right now I'm finding it very difficult to actually do both of those at the same time. Okay, the last lesson that I want to kind of say with this is the fact that I know that this is a winning mindset. I feel really confident now that I've found a framework that will work for the future. Maybe I won't see results in a year or two. It's the same way with going to the gym, same way with kind of financial success, same way with career success. Things that you work on now, they only like actually see real world effects in a year or two, but I know that this framework is really going to do well, so I'm going to be chasing this for a while. I mentioned before that 100 users in 7 days was a little bit difficult, a little bit too aggressive, so I actually changed it on 2 approaches. I changed it to a monetization rather than a user growth. So now it's $100 rather than 100 users, and now it's 10 days. So I've kind of pushed up the days a little bit. So $100 in 10 days, $1,000 in 30, and then 10,000 in 60 days. I'm going to be doing challenge number 2. I've already started that. You can check that out in my Notions again. It's called Project Nepo. Okay, that basically wraps up the video. I would 100% recommend that you actually try this framework out. I think that it's absolutely amazing. There's a bunch of resources down below that basically just shows you everything that I've done. I also want to know, if you want to leave a comment, what is the boldest thing you've ever done in terms of chasing your dreams? Tell me about that. That basically wraps it up. I'll see you guys in the next one.